If you have a Bible, please turn to Mark chapter 14. And after I've read this passage, you may think, Andy, what do you have to add that Naomi hasn't already said? You would be right. But we'll have a look at this passage together. We're in chapter 14, and we're going to read from verse 26. And before we get into reading the passage, just some context. So if you've been following week by week and following closely, you will have realized that we did chapter 13 last week, despite having done two preaches on chapter 14 2 and 3 weeks ago. So we're back into chapter 14, okay? So we did it out of order, basically. We mixed up the order. And so what I'm now asking you to think about is not necessarily what Johnny preached on last week, but to remember what Charlotte preached on 2 weeks ago, which was the Last Supper. So Jesus and his disciples were celebrating the Passover, the annual Jewish festival, and during that meal, Jesus said unexpectedly, "Take and eat this bread, this is my body." And when they drank the wine after the meal, that was a normal thing to do, to pass the cup round, but he changed it and he said, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many." Jesus' physical death was imminent. His physical suffering and pain that he was about to endure was very much in his consciousness. As he shared that Passover meal, that Last Supper, he was thinking and teaching about his death. And then in verse 26, it says, when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. So that's at the end of the Passover meal. They've been doing that in the evening. It's into the evening. It's dark. It's perhaps late in the night. They'd had the Passover meal. They'd celebrated that Jewish festival, that Jewish meal. And then they sang a hymn. That's good. There's not often a lot of singing, actually, in the Gospels, you might find. This is an example where they sang a hymn together at the end of that Passover meal. And then they went out to the Mount of Olives. So Johnny last week was talking about something that had happened on the Mount of Olives. Chronologically wise, they'd done that. They'd been back into Jerusalem. They'd had the Passover meal, and now they were back at the Mount of Olives, okay? We're happy with the chronology. So from verse 26, I'm going to read through. And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." Peter said to him, "Even though they all fall away, I will not." And Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. But he said emphatically, "If I must die with you, I will not deny you." And they all said the same. And they went to a place called Gethsemane. And he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." And he took with him Peter and James and John, and began to be greatly distressed and troubled. And he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch." And going a little further, he fell on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, "Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me. Yet not what I will, but what you will." And he came and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "Simon, are you asleep? Could you not watch 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." And again he went away and prayed and saying the same words. And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy, and they did not know what to answer him. And he came the 3rd time and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? It is enough, the hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." And immediately, whilst he was speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Seize him and lead him away under guard." And when he came, he went up to him at once and said, "Rabbi," and he kissed him. And they laid hands on him and seized him. But one of those who stood by drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. And Jesus said to them, "Have you come again out as against a robber with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I was with you in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me, but let the scriptures be fulfilled." And they all left him and fled. This morning I want to draw out from that passage 4 points, 4 responses for moments of great distress. In verse 33 it states that Jesus was greatly distressed and troubled. And he said, "My soul is sorrowful even to death." Jesus was not exempt from distress and trouble. In fact, it seems to me that a core part of life, a core part of being human, is some experience of distress and trouble at some point in life. Personally, I and myself and Emma, we've had many low and difficult moments over the last 4 to 5 years. Some of you will know some of that story. We've had our personal experience for each of us of distress and trouble will vary from one person to another. Naomi and Tom have shared some of their story of some of their trouble over the last few years, and it wasn't just a few nights of not sleeping. It was prolonged period for Naomi in particular. Our experiences may vary, and sometimes when we think of Jesus' suffering, we might automatically think of his physical death, of him being beaten, of the kind of physical pain and suffering that he experienced. But in this passage, and I'm going to focus just on a few verses, but I wanted to read the whole passage because actually it wasn't just the physical suffering that he would endure in this moment of great distress and trouble. In this passage, those few verses that I read, he experienced loneliness. He experienced being let down by his closest friends. He experienced betrayal. He experienced injustice as he was unfairly arrested and treated. He says, "Have you come out against me like a robber?" He experienced abandonment. That last verse I read, they all left him and fled. He experienced broken promises of his friends, Peter saying, "I'll be with you till the end." And yet, by the end of this passage, Peter had fled along with the others. It might be sometimes that we think, well, I can't associate with Jesus' suffering in terms of his physical death, but actually he can associate with us in some of these things I've just mentioned, of loneliness, of betrayal, of injustice. Jesus also, and this might be a controversial way of phrasing it, but I'm just going to phrase it and then you can work with me. Jesus experienced what some of us might call unanswered prayer. Because 3 times Jesus went and prayed, "Lord, let this cup be taken from me." And yet at the end of the passage, we see that Jesus is still very much holding that cup because Judas comes to betray him and he's arrested straight away. The phrase unanswered prayer is the controversial bit in that, and we'll explore that a little bit. But there are times when we bring requests to God And we bring the request again, and we bring the request again. And then what we've prayed for, the opposite happens. Just like Jesus did here. Jesus brought this request and prayed, and yet the opposite happened. But in this passage, and I want to really talk just about one verse, which is verse 36, and I'll read that again in a minute. In this passage, Jesus also gives us a wonderful model of how we can respond in moments of great distress. It says in verse 36 that Jesus had gone to pray. He fell on the ground and prayed. Verse 36, and he said, Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. What a wonderful model, example, aid for us in our moments of great distress. Just want to work through those verses. Jesus started praying, Abba, Father. In the Lord's Prayer, which he taught to many people, how did he open that up? Well, when the disciples said, teach us how to pray, his opening words were, Our Father, our Father. In this prayer, Jesus goes further and he cries out, Abba, Father. Jesus, in his moment of great distress, drew closer to God. Abba is a word meaning dad, daddy. It's more intimate than just father. It's still the same name. It's still that kind of same paternal relationship. But Abba is the kind of word that a child might use. Almost as a first word. Dada, daddy. There's this greater intimacy with the word Abba than Father. And Jesus had taught his disciples to pray, Our Father, which in itself was radical, God being our Father. And here Jesus, in his moment of greatest distress, goes further in his intimacy and cries out, Abba, like a little child calling with great faith and great intimacy to his dad. In moments for us of great distress and great difficulty, it's easy to withdraw from God. It's easy to feel distant from God. It's easy to treat him as if he's far away. It's in those moments where it's kind of perhaps common to feel like we have a long distance relationship with God, if indeed we feel like we have any relationship with God in those moments. Humanly, it's kind of this sense of actually God is, I know God's there, but it's so difficult at the moment that he must be far off. That's so often a normal response for us. But Jesus' modeling in this moment was to draw even closer to God. I loved as Naomi shared her story. She said actually there were then times as she kind of went through that journey of beginning to pray, no, God, I just need your presence. Just like Jesus did here. Jesus crying out, Abba. We need to draw closer to our heavenly dad, to be conscious of his proximity and depth of relationship to us. It's easy in these moments of distress to feel distant from God, but we need to draw close to him. Psalm 63 says, my soul clings to you, your right hand upholds me. It's a verse I go back to often in my moments of distress, when I'm feeling like, God, I'm just clinging on by my fingertips. God, it feels like I might slip at any moment. My soul is clinging to you, God. And yet your right hand is holding me safe. I couldn't slip because your right hand's holding me. It's a verse in Psalms I go to often. There's a song, I listen to a lot of songs which we might call laments. It's the kind of song we don't sing on a Sunday morning because, we want to be more uplifting. But I listen to a lot of songs in my personal praise and worship, which are kind of, that sense of crying out to God. There's a lyric in a song where the first verse says, I feel like giving up. God, I feel like giving up. And then the second verse, God responds with this wonderful lyric, when you felt like giving up, I never did. God never feels like giving up. When our soul is clinging to him, his right hand is holding us safe. In moments of great distress, draw near, draw close to an intimate Abba Father. Jesus goes on, all things are possible for you. What a wonderful declaration of faith. How many times in my life, in your life, have we thought, actually, this is getting really difficult. I wonder if even God can act here. I've heard that he's done it for others, but, I'm just not sure. Jesus goes straight in there. God, all things are possible for you. It's good in our moments of distress and trouble to declare in faith the greatness of God. This, again, over the last few years has been what I rely on, just declaring the greatness of God, that God is sovereign, that God is all-powerful, that nothing is impossible for God, that he is able. My circumstances, the highs and the lows, do not reflect any limitation on the part of God. They do not diminish the greatness of God. If you're going through a difficult time, it does not diminish the greatness of God. If you are struggling, whether it be physical, emotional, relational, that does not dilute the glory of God. One of the passages I love is in Genesis 1. It says we were created in the image of God, in the image and likeness of God. We were created to reflect his glory in all the earth. God, do not let the difficulties in my life dilute your glory reflected through me. God's still glorious. Difficult times do not undermine the goodness of God. Again, a different song, a different lyric. There's a song that says, good. I believe you're still good, even when life's not good. God is always good, even when my life isn't. Sometimes we need to declare these things in faith. We need to remind ourselves of the greatness of God, which is undiluted despite the circumstances that we face. Then Jesus prayed, remove this cup from me. It's a bit of a strange phrase, but the cup was a reference to his suffering, to his pain. God, remove this cup from me. Remove my suffering. Remove this pain. We can bring our requests to God. Jesus, it was kind of quite direct here, wasn't he? It just says, Abba, Father, all things are possible. Will you remove this suffering from me? It's a request. We can bring our requests to God. We don't need long prayers with many words. We don't need to kind of recite half the Bible before we get to our request. Jesus has prayed 2 lines so far. Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. God, here's my request. We can ask for healing. We can ask for reconciliation. We can ask for relationships to be restored. We can ask for God's intervention in people's lives. We can ask for change in circumstances. We can ask for God's peace, for his strength, for his endurance. We can bring our requests to God. Remove this cup from me. What is your request this morning? Don't answer that out loud right now. What is your request this morning? You don't have to pretend otherwise. There's a real authenticity about Jesus in this moment. There wasn't a sense, this is going to seem obvious because he wasn't British, but there wasn't a sense of British politeness. When he's asked, when he takes the disciples, and they say, how are you? Oh yeah, I'm okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm just going to go off and pray. He didn't do that. He said, my soul is troubled. I'm greatly distressed. He brings to God this honest, direct request. God, can you take away my suffering? Can you take away this pain? There's an authenticity and a reality and a hard-hitting sense of, this is, God, what I'm bringing to you. And then he said, yet not what I will, but what you will. We can bring any request to God, but we need to come with humility and openness. We can be direct and say, God, this is what I really need. I'm clinging on to you here in faith and hope that you will act in this situation, and I'd really love you to act in this way. But not what I will, but what you will. We need to be willing to surrender and lay down our will, to lay down our plans and our desires. And I'm not saying that glibly as if I haven't walked through difficult times. I'm not going into lots of detail on some of those because this is recorded and will be available online. But I will share a number of years ago when my mum was first diagnosed with cancer, and she died within the year. I remember just having times of saying, God, clearly I want her to be healed. I want her to be made well. I want her to have many more years to live. But God, it's going to be your plan. I remember times where actually it wasn't, I found it difficult when I said about point 2, declare God's greatness. I found that difficult. I remember walking our dog at one point just thinking, God, I don't have a good thought in my mind about your greatness. And the song came to me, then sings my soul, my Saviour God, to thee, how great thou art. My heart and my mind couldn't do it. I couldn't think of words to do it. And by the Holy Spirit, there was a song, well, my soul will sing of your greatness. Then sings my soul, how great you are. We need to be willing to lay down our plans in recognition of the sovereignty of God and submit to God's plans. There's 2 parts in that. Yet not what I will, but what you will. It's not, and this can be difficult, God, this is my first choice, but if you're not willing to do that, maybe go for my second choice. It isn't I'm coming to God with a list of options. It's God, this is my heart's desire. This is what I'm praying for. But I'm willing to lay that down, and I'm willing to submit to your plan. I'm willing to say, God, you have your will in my life. Again, it was just wonderful testimony from Naomi about how as she wrestled with that, bringing her request to God, not wrong to pray for sleep, not wrong to pray for your little boy to sleep. It's a good request to bring to God. But to also say, actually, God, what is your will in this? How can I reflect your glory? How can I follow you and endure in difficult circumstances? Jesus prayed 3 times. And then he said, rise, let's be going. Because Judas had come to betray him. Laying down his life for the will of God. Not what I will, God, but what you will. God, show me your will. Show me your great plan. Hold me safe whilst we wrestle with that. Just going to read verse 33 again. Sorry, 36. And he said, Abba, Father, draw close to God. All things are possible for you. Declare the greatness of God. Remove this cup from me. Bring our requests to God. Yet not what I will, but what you will. Surrender and submit to God. I'd love us, we've just got a few minutes to respond. Perhaps Steph can come up with Matthew and the band. And it's a difficult response because each person's situation, circumstance is different. Some people will have walked through difficult moments and at this point be in a better season. Others are in a difficult season and difficult moment right now. Each circumstance and situation is different. But I'd love us just to stand if you're willing and able to stand. It's fine if